I'm Mike, this is Film Masters, and on this episode, we're going to be installing the Humbucker pickup. Now, that runs underneath the 3 strings of the short guitar neck, so let's get straight into the tutorial. So the humbucker that I've selected is from a electric guitar. It has 2 rails, so this is the pickup here. It's a magnetic pickup. And it's also got the 1/4 inch socket, so we can put our guitar leads into it, straight into our computer or mixer. It has a ground wire, so keep an eye on this. We need to ground that, and I'll show you when we will do that. It's also got 2 adjustment knobs. It's got a volume as well as a tuner. And let's make sure that we set them to anti-clockwise so that they're on 0. And this is a selector. So if you, on this particular device, you can actually put another humbucker or pickup on it and allow you to switch between it. So make sure that you've selected it so that it switches and only selects the railed pickup. So one thing I want to do first of all, I'm going to use some electrical tape. You can buy this fairly cheaply from your hardware store. I'm going to just tape around these wires here in order to make sure that they're not obviously swinging around, as well as I don't want the actual wires themselves to come loose while it's in the box. And it's going to give that little bit of extra help in making sure those wires stick together. So let's have a look at our 2-railed humbucker now. So this is a magnetic pickup. Now you'll notice there's 2 holes on each side where the screw is. It's also got 2 rails which are magnetic. So first of all, we're going to use our ruler and make sure that from the 3-string bridge from the cigar box, it's nice and central. And I'm going to make a measurement. You want it to be away from, obviously, the hurdy-gurdy wheel. It's approximately 4 inches that I've got here. So if you can make it around about 4 inches away, you'll be fine. Now I've put a mark there, obviously, so I know where the center is. And now I'm going to work out the width of the actual humbucker. Just draw, using a pencil, the corners of it, making sure that you're not including where the screws are going into. So what you're doing is you're measuring where that magnetic part is, the bit that's going to stick out through the wood. So I'm going to take a measurement here. Yours might be slightly different, especially if you're using a 3-string guitar pickup. I'll show you one of them very shortly. And I'm going to measure the width as well of the humbucker so I know the measurement. So once I've got that down, I'm going to relay that information onto my soundboard and draw a line around it, mark it out, and then we're going to cut it out. I'm using a square, as you can see. I'm using the back of the soundboard where it's nice and straight so I can make sure that my lines are straight. Once I've drawn my lines, because I want to make sure that I'm going to cut the right piece out, we don't want to make another soundboard up, I'm going to use the humbucker again and just recheck to make sure that my measurements are correct. So it's always a good thing to measure twice, cut once, as they say. Once I've done that, I'm going to obviously just draw the lines on the ends where I'm going to cut it out. Now you also need to make sure that you take great care when you're cutting it out. Again, be careful with OH&S, obviously you don't want to slip and cut yourself. So I'm just going to mark the part that we're going to remove, which has got the X, and I'm going to do one more check again, making sure that the part I'm cutting out is only going to be for the magnetic pickup for the humbucker. Now I'm using a drill now. The drill is the same thickness as my jigsaw. So I'm going to use a jigsaw to cut this out. You can use a Stanley knife if you have got a thin soundboard in which you can make a few different cuts with a metal ruler. Another option obviously is to use a small cutting saw to cut through, but you'll obviously still need to drill a hole through it. Now one mistake I did make here, I should have drilled 3 holes. I should have drilled 1 on each corner and 1 on the other side in the other corner, and you'll see that mistake shortly. So I'm going to use the jigsaw now obviously to go from one hole to the other and cut it through. Just take your time. Doesn't matter if it's not 100% perfect because we're going to use a file to file it off and make sure it's nice and square. So as you can see, I'm also cutting on the inside of the line. So that gives me a little bit of material to play around with. So where I've just finished that cut there, I should have drilled another hole, which would have assisted me in getting this part out a lot easier than I actually have. So you can learn from my mistake. So here we are making a mistake on the video. So the reason why we only do 3 holes on this is because if I try to put the jigsaw in from the other direction, obviously that's where the reverb tank is. So there's not enough room there for me to actually turn it around. So I've drilled a hole in the middle. In fact, I should have drilled it where I've cut through, but obviously because I've already cut that through, I was a little bit concerned that I might actually damage the soundboard. So here I am cutting through from the middle to the end. And I'll show you, obviously you can't take that out because we haven't cut all the way through. And if I try to put my jigsaw in from the other angle, it won't let me go through. I'm going to cut this out to the other hole like so, which has now left me with that piece of material there. So if I would have done it as 3, and as you can see, I can't turn it around. So I'm going to use a drill and just take my time so I don't crack it or split the timber, and just gently drill that hole out so I can put my jigsaw in. So if you can put 3 holes in and put the 3rd one where I'm drilling right now, that's going to save you a lot of time and hassle what I'm doing right now. It's probably not too much of a big deal for me. I've got the tools to actually do this, but if you're using hand tools and so forth, you want to make sure that you get it done right the first time. I'm also going to use a square, small file. Now this is just a standard metal or wood file, and I'm going to take my time and go around the corners of it and just clean up the material. Because it's a thin soundboard, it's not going to take me that long to remove it. I did speed up the video obviously, so you don't have to watch me file it the whole time. However, you can see even with it sped up 2 times the speed, you can actually see that it doesn't really take that long to sand it down. Then obviously we make sure that we clean all the material out of where the hole is. And there's a little piece that we make sure that we take out from the inside that fell through. And now we're going to test it. So we're going to put the pickup from underneath. So you can see it's only the magnetic 2 rails going through. And we're going to measure up now to figure out where the holes go for our 2 screws. So another thing here, which would have sped up my workflow, and obviously I wasn't thinking when I was doing it because I'm obviously videoing at the same time. If you actually turn that upside down and push it in from the top down, it'll actually make it a lot easier for you to mark out where the holes need to go. So I've probably done it the hard way again, obviously, but again, you can learn from my mistake. So let's get a drill bit now. Let's make sure that it is the same thickness as where the screws go into, so the screw hole. And obviously I've got my screws ready to go for installation. Now they do come with screws with it when you buy it. And I'm just going to drill where those 2 holes are, where I've marked it for the humbucker. Once I've done that, it's just a matter of making sure that the wire, I'm going to make sure that my wire faces the inner part of where the soundboard is, just so it makes it a little bit cleaner on the inside. And then, excuse my wrist, obviously, I'm going to start putting in my screws. I'm not going to screw them up the full way. As you can see, it's sitting a little bit higher on the soundboard at the moment. And the reason for that is because whenever we're putting in something or a part, it's always a good idea. It's always a good idea to hand tighten the screws, not too tight, just so that they grip on there, and then do the same to the other. So that way you've got a little bit of slack there to make sure that you're making sure it's central. And then once you're happy with the installation, you screw both screws in nice and firmly. Don't over tighten it because the bases of these are plastic, and if you over tighten it, you'll strip out the thread or you'll crack it. So that's one thing you don't want to do. You just want to make sure it's got a firm tightness to it. And then give it a little bit of a shake, make sure it doesn't move around. And this is what the other version of our 3 guitar pickup looks like. It's more of a curved edge. Now this is for a cigar box, and you'll see it's also got the 3 string magnetic pickups where the strings need to be above. The good thing about the 2 rails is doesn't matter if your strings are out a little bit, it's going to pick it up anyway, whereas this needs to be more accurate. Another thing you need to do obviously is just make sure that you vacuum out all of the material that you've got from the sawing from inside. We want to make sure it's nice and clean. And now I'm just going to put the back of the box on before we put the reverb tank on the next episode. And what I'm going to do is just get a pen or a pencil and just draw the inside of where the frame is. That's going to give me a good indication where I can put all the devices in. So there we have the line and the good indication of where we're going to drill. And I've also written at the very top of that top so I know where it is. So again, that allows me to know when I'm drilling to put my 1/4 inch connections on the back where it can go. So in the next tutorial, we're going to be installing the piezo pickups in the box. So that's the one that goes under the bridge, as well as the other one for all the noise makers. So if you want to become a Filmmaster subby, it is pretty simple. You can subscribe to my channel. You can follow me on Facebook and or on Twitter. And until next time, don't just film it, master it.